easy, and number 4 is kind of niche, so I'll explain it soon. And we're starting with the katana, which also happens to be just right there. Now, in terms of visuals of the katana, the actual sword itself, pretty basic. Its attacks, also pretty basic. Now, in terms of damage, it's incredibly mid. And I've even got enchantments on this thing as well to, like, make it better. But what are you going to expect from, like, the very first sword in the game? In terms of how functional this sword is, you can't use it for movement because I only traveled about 2 pixels, and it also doesn't have any, like, super long-range attacks. Therefore, the katana is easily a D tier. Now, the katana might be bad, but what about 2 of them? I've got the burning enchantment on this, so the damage is going to be better than if it didn't. But in terms of visuals, I mean, it's just katana squared, right? There's nothing crazy about it. The attack visuals also are just, like, sort of better versions of the previous one. What is kind of cool, though, is I don't know if you caught that, is with the tornado move, you leave, like, a mark on the floor. Like that, which is some brownie points, I guess. Now, functionality, once again, the sword gives no movement. In fact, even less movement than the katana. But if we're talking damage, let's see. I mean, I'm being carried by the burn. I mean, it's all right. It's, like, incredibly mid. That's exactly how I describe it. You'd think 2 swords double the damage, but surprisingly no. But also, this sword doesn't really fall into the 4th category of how we're going to rank these, so it is simply another D tier. Now we're on the final common sword, the cutlass. Now, this sword, it's just a copy-paste of katana. Like, genuinely, it's the exact same, except for the fact that I've got a different enchantment. It's just the same. There's nothing else different about it. Damage is also incredibly mid, so because of that, the cutlass, it's just the exact same as the katana. It looks a bit better, at least. Next up, we have got the... Can you not? We've got the iron mace. Now, this sword's visuals, like visually, the actual sword itself, it's alright. The visuals of the attacks, that move is kind of cool. That one is a little bit mid, you could say. In terms of damage, the thing that sets this sword apart from other swords is that right there. For the final left click, it becomes a slam, which also does a little bit more damage. But other than that, its range is so bad. Next, we're going to talk about how functional this sword is. And because of the enchantment on mine, it is really not functional. But I'm just trying to stand around and do nothing because NPCs just start fighting me for no reason. Like, I can just be vibing right here, and look, they're already walking towards me. However, if I had this for grinding, this would be pretty useful. But because the visuals are, like, kind of a step up, and the attacks kind of look cool, I'm gonna put it in C tier. Next, we have got this sword right here, the Shark Saw. And this sword is actually really cool. So in terms of visuals, it's also got a final slam. Not only that, but its moves have really cool particles for just like an uncommon sword. Like, that is so cool. If you hold the Z move as well, you get, like, wiggly arms. You know, like, you're holding back the power. In terms of functionality, this sword is, like, really not that functional. It's got 0 movements, but the execution move, actually, like, it's kind of like a better version of the spin first. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it top end of C tier. I mean, realistically, it's just not ever gonna be B tier. The only thing that's B tier about this is just how cool it looks. Next, we have got the triple katana. The visuals of this sword, I mean, in terms of how it looks, it's just 3 katanas. Like, we just keep upgrading. The visuals of the attacks, though, now this is where it's starting to get clean. I absolutely love the blue aura of these attacks. It looks so good. But sadly, while it looks good, the actual damage you can output is honestly kind of mid. And not only that, it's got a movement ability that moves you about 2 centimeters. So because of how the attacks look, I'm putting this just below Shark Saw. Alright, next up is Twin Hooks, which... Bro, why do these guys just fight me for no reason? Visually, the way that you hold this sword, it's so cool. One in front, one behind. The actual attacks... Yeah, like, I literally missed that one, but they're alright, I guess. There's nothing crazy about them. In terms of actual damage, like, that did 3.7k. That's kind of huge. And this move here reaches from, like, all the way across there and stun locks the enemy. So already we're starting to see, like, a much better sword here. However, the damage is obviously, like, improved because of my mastery. Like, I've got it to 300 mastery, which is more than all the other common swords. One thing that does kind of suck about this sword, though, is the Z move's range. Like, you see how close I am to this enemy, right? And then I use the move, and it only goes to there. However, I think I have seen people using Twin Hooks in, like, skilled PvP builds before, so it's definitely got potential. But just in my opinion, I think I prefer Shark Saw. But now moving on to the first rare sword of the bunch, and that's the Warden Sword. One thing that is kind of cool about the Warden Sword is how you hold it and how much range the left clicks have. Because the sword's longer, this could be placebo, but it feels like you can hit the enemies from further away. The actual moves of the Warden Sword, that move kind of looks cool. Tornado Slash. I mean, realistically, this is just the dual katana reskinned with a slightly cooler Z move. This sword, not functional at all. You can't use it to move, and you're basically never going to hit that move move ever unless you're grinding. So for that reason, I mean, it's just a katana. So it's going in D tier. It's going top of D tier because it's got a bit more range. Now we're getting onto a super interesting one. We've got the regular trident. In terms of how just the sword looks, I think it's very cool. And in terms of visuals of the attacks, we've got trident throw, which looks so good. And then water pulse, which looks also very cool. Now this sword is kind of like a mid spiky trident in my opinion because of this trident throw where you can like yoink them towards you. But the visuals, so much cooler than the spiky trident. This is why we need a water fruit. It just looks good. Now, in terms of functionality, although you have this move here where you fly towards it and then also like pull enemies towards you, the fact that the X moves holds you in place for so long kind of makes this sword a bit more mid. However, this sword does fall into the 4th category that I'm ranking these by. And that's like just how fun the sword is to use. And what makes this sword so much fun to use is the fact that you can just yoink and just pull people towards you. Like that just instantly makes the sword so much better. And I guess as well, like you can combo the Z into the X. So for that reason, I'm actually gonna put this in B tier. Easily a B tier. Now we're getting onto a very interesting sword. The Soul Cane. Although you can buy this sword in the first C, it is not to be messed with. This sword is always a part of skill builds when people use them because it's got this move here, Soul Beam, which freezes people in place. It's also got Soul Slashes, which looks very cool. So in terms of visuals, I personally love how clean the Soul Cane is. I don't know, there's just something like oddly satisfying about it. This sword, while it might not have movement, the fact that you can just completely stun people in ice, as seen by this totally real player right here, instantly bumps it up a few tiers. And in terms of like how fun it is as well, like the fact that it's basically just like an ice fruit in a sword makes this way more fun than it needs to be. So for that reason, I'm actually gonna put this sword at the very top of B tier. Next up, we have got one of my favorite swords in the entire game, a metal pipe. Now you might be wondering why a literal pipe is one of my favorite swords in the entire game, but just you wait and see. Let's talk damage. If I smack him over the head with a pipe, it's pretty good. Also, I've got burns, so like it's gonna be even better. But visuals, the pipe itself, I mean, it's a pipe, right? But wait till you see the moves. Look at that, so sick. Hey, can you not freeze me? And then arguably the best move is this one, Dragon Blast. Fires out a straight fire dragon. Even the dragon fruit doesn't do that, but some silly little pipe, it can fire out a fire dragon, which places down a little burn field as well. So visuals, damage, both very good. Also, the fact that you can use the Z move and hold them in place, I really like. So I'm guessing you could probably use that as a combo extender. I'm not much of a PvP guy, but I'm guessing you probably can. So this sword once again falls into the fun category, just because of simply how fun it is to place down a flame on the floor of where you're firing the X move. So I gotta do it. Pipe is an A tier sword. It has to be said. Now, before the most recent update, this sword used to be so bad, but now, I mean, still kind of bad, but there's something new about it that makes it so sick, and that's its new particles. Look at this. It's so cool. You just create an entire field. Like I'm on an icy island, I just made a field, and the way that they disappear, they like wither away. So sick. I've made a patch of grass. Like Mr. Beast should hire me for Team Trees. Now there is like a hidden secret about this sword that not a lot of people know about, and if you do, you need to actually go outside and touch some actual grass, not just the grass on the sword. And that's if you get close to someone and use the X move, you pull them with you and slam them down, which is so much fun. For that reason, I'm gonna put the longsword in the A tier. Now you're probably wondering, why would you do that? Quite simply, there is no other fruit sword weapon gun that has these grassy effects. It's super unique and it's pretty funny, so I'm putting it in A tier. The next sword on the list is Smoker's Sword. Now this sword visually looks okay. It's basically a pipe, but worse. Its moves do actually look kind of cool. We've got Smoke Leopard, which just fires a smoky blast, and Smoke Apparition, which teleports you to them and places like a smoky area. So nothing too crazy, but also it's not the worst. In terms of how fast you left click, it's pretty quick. Not super slow, not super fast. However, it is basically just like a worse smoke fruit, and the smoke fruit is already pretty bad. So simply for that reason, I can't put this any higher than C tier. In fact, it's probably bottom of C tier for me. However, this sword right here, yeah, this sword is so cool. The new gravity cane, I love it so much. You've got this move, which pulls people towards you. Already looks very cool. Oh, this move, ready? Whoop. Bro, he attacked me, so it didn't look right. Hold on. Alright, okay. Lunar Blitz, attempt 2. You pull them up.
Sound fine? Cool. Let's roll. So guys, फिर से चैंपियन बनने का टाइम आ गया।
फिर से? पहले कब बने थे?
अभी तो वर्ल्ड कप उठाया था। कब? कब?
हाँ? इतनी बड़ी चीज कैसे भूल गए?
अरे कट कट कट।
सर अपनी टीम भूल गई कि हम लोग वर्ल्ड कप जीते थे।
हैं? अबे पासवर्ड थोड़ी है जो भूल जाएंगे।
शेफ, इंडियन टीम को बादाम खिलाना पड़ेगा। मेमोरी बहुत वीक है उनका।
ऑलराइट, इंडियन क्रिकेट टीम के लिए यू बादाम मिल्कशेक, तुम बादाम खीर और तुम बादाम हलवा।
क्या बात कर रहा है? हमने वर्ल्ड कप जीता था।
मजाक कर रहा है यार।
रुक, मजाक तो मेरे साथ हो रहा है भाई। हमारे हाथ का एक हेड मसाज मिलेगा ना, सब याद आ जाएगा। वर्ल्ड कप भूल गए हैं?
याद करो, हम वर्ल्ड कप जीते थे।
हाँ 1983 में। गाइस चल क्या रहा है?
अक्यूट मेमोरी लॉस, वर्ल्ड कप ही नहीं भूल गए। बताओ।
बता दूं? बता दे। भूलना पड़ता है। फिर से चैंपियन बनने के लिए हमें ये भूलना पड़ेगा कि हम चैंपियन थे। हर मैच पहले मैच जैसा खेलना पड़ेगा।
फिर से चैंपियन बनने का टाइम आ गया। ड्रीम 11 ओडीआई चैंपियंस कप 19 फरवरी से।
इस खेल में आदत लगना या आर्थिक जोखिम संभव है। जिम्मेदारी से खेलें।
Slash them a load of times and then slam them down. How sick is that? I feel like in terms of visuals and damage, the sword is really good. Not only that, but like how functional it is as well. You can pull people towards you, which if you did PvP is probably a useful skill to have. Also, not only that, you can lift them up, slam them down, and they're bewildered. They're bamboozled. Can you not? I was trying to say they're also befuddled. So this sword, A tier, easily. Above pipe. Okay, I don't know how we're going from that to this. This is like if Darth Maul was in the medieval era. But not only that, it's not even a cool looking sword. Like assassinates. Wow, what a cool dash. Raging Wind is just 3 tornadoes. So visuals of this sword, very mid. I mean, it leaves the scratches on the floor, which is cool. But that's about the only thing that is cool. That move, I actually missed. Like, that's just how bad this sword is. I'm sure there's probably some, like, absolute demon out there who's, like, a dual-headed blade main. But this sword just isn't even fun. It's not even functional. So for me, it's gotta be, like... I'm just gonna put it D tier. It's like the Warden sword. Now we've got the final rare sword, the Dragon Trident. And this sword, it looks sick, but it's built different. C move of Dragon Trident, C Dragon Fury, a forward-facing water attack that looks sick and does huge damage. And not only that, but the best part about this sword is the X move, Water Dragon Shower. Watch this range. I'm hitting everything in that area. How OP is that? Also, this sword just like looks insanely cool. The fact that it's just like a water fountain, gotta give it brownie points for that simple reason. So this sword is honestly the easiest A tier ever, easily. Now then, have I got an interesting sword for this next one? We've got Bicento. Now this sword, honestly, V1 is kind of mid, but if you get V2, yeah, V2 is kind of built different. We've got Windbreaker, which does this. Fires off 3 like wind slashes. So sick. Quake Sphere as well. It's like a better Quake. Like even Quake doesn't look this good somehow. It also feels really strong. I really like this sword. That move right there, the main reason why I like it. It's got a lot of range, a lot of damage. I mean, what's not to like? It's Whitebeard sword. So if I'm purely ranking the V2 version, this X move, it just raises up by so many levels for me. So it's got to be A tier. Just below Gravity Cane, I'll put it. This right here is the Buddy sword. This Devious Smile, it's not for show. Like this sword is built different. Visuals of the sword itself, I mean, it's all right. And the actual visuals of the attacks, kind of mid. But how functional this sword is what makes it so good. The range of the attacks on this sword, I mean, you can basically hit people from across the map. It's insane. Lightning Wave, if I like stand over here and fire, like I hit him and I send him flying. The damage of the sword is very good because it's got the passive damage. And if you combo the 2 moves, like look at that. Nearly 9k damage just from 2 hits. Now you do have to be like quite good at the game to actually hit people with the X move. Like I missed by a tiny pixel and it didn't hit. But that's part of the fun. So I'm gonna put the Buddy sword also in A tier. I think I'll put it just below Bicento in terms of how much I like it. The next sword on the list is Canvander. The sword is kind of cool. It has a lot of movement because of the left clicks. Like you literally just only go forwards. The way that you hold it as well, like your fencing, is kind of cool. And while the boss that uses this sword is like very strong, the sword itself feels a bit lackluster. It's like piercing dash. It does look okay with how it scatters petals around, but actually just trying to hit people with left clicks, it's very difficult. Like if you just stood still trying to left click them, it is not easy, which makes this sword like a lot less fun to use than it seems. And also just not very functional. I'm sure you could probably do some kind of cool combo with the 2 moves back to back, and it does do a lot of damage. Like that did 9,000 damage, but the range as well is just kind of bad. I only just reached that NPC from there. So Canvander, I'm just gonna put it below Solkane. But next we have got one of the stupidest swords to get in the entire game, the Dark Dagger. Now this sword gets bonus points for just being so difficult to actually attain because it's less than a 1% chance to get in total. Visuals, I mean, it's a mini Dark Blade, what's not to like? It's so funny how small it is. In terms of visuals of the moves, and you gotta pay close attention to the sound effects for this one. We've got Proficient Impale, which does a really high-pitched stab. Also has quite a bit of range. And then arguably the best part about this sword is Shaming Slash, where you teleport behind them and then stab. So while this sword might not have the craziest VFX, the fact that you can just teleport behind them and attack like that from super far far away, it's gotta be A tier. It can't not be A tier. I just don't think it's better than Gravity Cane though, so I'm gonna put it like number 2 in A tier. Next, we have got the Fox Lamp. Visuals of this sword, one of the best. It's a lamp that's like pulling in souls or something. Now for visuals of the attacks, you've got the Z move, which just, how cool is that? You just start gathering flames around you and then fire them off super far away. But not only that, if you hit them with the Z move, they get absolutely barraged by the follow-up attacks. Also, the X move is just like incredibly cool. It's just a huge fire blast, so cannot complain about the visuals of this sword. In fact, it's probably the first S tier in visuals. Now, in terms of how functional it is, it's got a ton of range with the Z move, which does wombo combo the enemy. And then also the X has 2 forms. It's got the hold form, which we've used before. And if you tap, you teleport to them and do a big blast. But I haven't explained my favorite thing about this sword. My favorite thing about this sword is holding the Z move and spinning around in circles and creating a bubble around myself. For that simple reason, it's S tier. S tier sword, what can I say? Next up, we have got Coco. And this is probably one of the most interesting swords on the list for the simple reason of how well it actually combos with the control fruit. Now, normally if you use injection shots, I can't hit that guy all the way over there. It's not even close. However, if I activate my room, and as long as the enemy is inside the room and I use injection shot, it just goes infinite distance and it hits. And you also saw as well, because of the lightning enchantment, I hit this guy next to me. So the fact that while you're in the room, you get almost infinite range on the X makes this sword so sick. And don't get me started on the Z as well. You do a delayed stab injection thing. However, nobody's using the control fruit. It's just so bad. So while this sword can do that stuff, I gotta deduct the points. So while it's certainly not S tier, I'm just gonna put it around A tier. I think the particles and stuff definitely carry. We have got the Midnight Blade next. I absolutely love this sword. And while you can't really see what it looks like because of my enchantment, the sword itself, very cool looking. But don't get me started on the attacks. We've got portal opening. Teleports you to them and does that. How cool is that? And then crescent dash as well. Dashes forwards, hits them with a portal slash. I think this sword might even just be my favorite sword in terms of visuals. So for that reason, it's already in S tier. I've also heard good things about this sword for combos and PvP. And in terms of how functional it is, you literally teleport to your opponent when you use the Z move. So it's actually quite decent for movement. So while it might not have the damage of some of the mythical swords we're going to be looking at soon, I gotta put it in S tier. The visuals carry so hard. Next up, we have got just a literal pole. That's it. This is not just any pole. No, no, no. This pole allows you to become Zeus himself. Behold! Explosive cloud. Explosive rain. Feeling underwhelmed yet? Because I am. While the visuals of this sword are like, alright. When you hold the X move, you like spin it around like this. That's about all this sword's got going for it. And not only that, the Z move doesn't even go that fast. Same with the X move. So I'm sorry, pole V1, but you're just B tier. Nothing you can do about it. Oh, but what about the pole with neon lights on the end? Can you not? Okay, so on this sword, I've got the enchantment that makes enemies angry at me all the time. But that's kind of a good thing. So in terms of how the actual sword looks, it's very cool. It's got all these small little details. The actual attacking moves are like an upgraded version of the pole V1. And while the sword doesn't actually have any movement, apart from like the left click, the way that Electric Prison holds the enemies in place if you hit them for a little bit is making it not completely terrible. And I'm sure you could probably combo someone with the X move of this if you get them close. But honestly, just about everything in this sword, it's at best top of B tier. Now this sword on my hip is one that I've been waiting to show off. Other than the fact that it dislocates your arm whenever you hold it, Rengoku has some of the coolest moves. Now it's got an X move that does like a little floor of fire, and it already goes pretty far. But just you wait. If you hold the X move just a tiny bit more until the screen gets like a red glow and it starts glowing like this, and then you hold it and then you attack. Look at that AoE. How busted is that? Not to mention as well, the Z move does like a non-stop combo of flame attacks. Look at that AoE. That's insane. I feel like this sword is super slept on. I absolutely love the Rengoku sword just because of the X move. The X move carries so much. So much so that I'm putting it very top of A tier. I think it only just doesn't have enough movement. Next up is the Saber. A sword you can actually get in the first C, but if you manage to get its V2 version, which is this is what it is, it doesn't change anything visually apart from the attacks. Now Saber V2's X move, it sounds like you're firing out a laser beam, and it looks like it as well. And then you got Deadly Rush, which is the same. Visuals on the Saber, next level. I think this is just like better CDK visuals. Not only that, but the damage of Saber is so good. In fact, I think a lot of people use this in PvP just because of how good the damage is. Ooh, I got a Conjure Coco. See guys, not only that, it gives you 2 times extra luck while holding it. Totally real and true facts. Also, the fact that this is like Shanks' sword, S tier. Simple. Don't even have to think about it. It's just fun to use. Now we've got one of the 3 true triple katanas. We've got Sadi. And personally, I think this sword is slept on. Like, while it might look a little bit basic, the attacks themselves, they are not basic. We've got Swords Dance. which wombo combos the enemy into the sky, and then true air slash, which has so much range. Did you see how I hit the skeleton that was all the way over there? So I think just with simply how far the X move's range is, and the fact that you can probably combo off the Z move, Sadi, A tier. Now this is one of the most recent swords to be added to block suits, the Shark Anchor. And when I say that it's OP, that is an understatement. The first move is called Typhoon Toss, where if you hold it down, you grab anybody nearby, and then you yeet the anchor to wherever you're aiming. So if I aim it over there, it goes all the way over there. Armor Breaker as well is a dash move that then combos and slams them down into the ground. So the visuals of this sword, easily an S tier. The damage, also an S tier. The fact that it can stun, what does this sword not do? Easily just one of the most fun swords to use, because even the worst players can be good if they hold the Shark Anchor. So I especially like it for that reason. I'm putting it in S tier. Next up is Shisui. And this sword is only for people who either hate themselves or are very good at the game, which honestly probably come hand in hand, realistically. The first move you got is True Quiet Rush. Pretty simple, doesn't go too far, but looks and sounds incredible. And then you got Focus Shot, which is like a snipe, and it goes very far. I believe this is one of the swords that most people use in skill builds because of that reason, but I just really like how it looks and sounds. Never mind any skill build nonsense, I think this sword sounds really cool. And the fact that you can like snipe people from halfway across the map using this, extra cool. So I'm putting Shisui in S tier. I think it's better than Sadi as well, so it's gonna go right there. Next up is my spicy spiky trident. The actual sword itself, I mean, it's a spiky trident, right? But where the sword truly shines, it is combo potential. Let's say Cake Queen is running away from me. You know, you can see the absolute terror in her eyes right now. I press the X move, yoink, she's just instantly pulled towards me. And then the Z move as well. You push them forwards, and you can use it as like a combo extender, I think, right? That's something everybody rants and raves about with this sword. The fact that it's so good for combos. And one thing about the X move as well is even if you miss it, you can use it for movement. So not only can you move with the Z move, but you can also move with the X move, if you hit it, that is. Which just makes it one of the most fun swords to use. The only thing that I don't really like about the sword is the questionable visual effects. But other than that, it's easily an S tier sword. Now don't get me started on this sword. We've got the Tushita. Now not only do you hold this sword like an absolute badass, like literally I feel like a samurai, but because it's one of the cursed dual katanas, its visuals look insane. You've got Heavenly Lunges, which just sends out a bunch of stabs, and then you've got Celestial Ravager, which it leaves a giant X marks the spot on the floor. Also, this sword has like decent movement because of the X move. Like I just get sent flying forwards, and then the Z move just, it does so much damage. 5.7k. So while I don't actually think Tushita is the best of the two CDKs, I gotta put it in A tier. In fact, it's gotta be high A tier, just above Shisui. Now we have got the final of the true triple katanas. We've got Wanda, and this sword, if I'm being completely honest, it's kind of mid. You've got continuous slashes, which just, well, slashes a few times, doesn't even do that good of damage. And then Dragon Gust, which while it sounds cool and fires off a dragon, which looks kind of cool, it's just mid. In my opinion, Wando is just like the worst of the three triple katanas. I know it's not that bad, but it's not great either. Honestly, I think I'm just gonna put Wando in B tier. I'm not really a fan. Next, we have got the better of the two cursed dual katanas in my opinion. We've got Yama, and the reason why I think this sword is better of the two is because of how much range it actually has. The Z move, Hellish Slash, looks sick. You become like a Beyblade for a second and then do a slash. Infernal Hurricane as well. It's just a super anime looking attack, let's be real. You're slashing through them and then attacking after the slash. Like this Dragon Crew Warrior, they're not ready. Boom. I believe as well I've heard good things about people using this sword in PvP. I've never used it myself, so I don't know. But the overall visuals of this sword and just how fun it feels to use, honestly, make this an S tier sword for me. But probably bottom of S tier. It's time for the mythical swords, and we're starting with the cursed dual katanas. Let's be real, you already know which category this is gonna go in. We've got a move that when used close to someone, gets them trapped in a tornado and then fires them off. And then you've got an X move that has insane range that when hitting someone with it, fires off a blast after. Like, how cool is that? It's so visually cool. So in terms of how useful this is for movement, damage, and visuals, CDK is easily an S tier. It's not even close. Now we have got the Dark Blade. In my opinion, the coolest looking sword visually. I'm not quite sure why it's got these like little wings that flap. It's got bandages around the sword. What's not to like? That's not even to say how cool it looks visually. Now I've currently got it V3, which means it's got like this white glow instead of green. Its first Z move, so sick. And if you hold the Z move as well, you then fly forwards instead. Then we've got the X move, which fires forwards a giant blast, which goes very far. You might have thought, hey, that looked kind of cool. Just you wait. If you hold down changes the slash to be faster and like thinner. Visuals, S tier, easily. Damage, also S tier. There is a reason why this sword costs Robux. In terms of how fun this sword is to use, there's nothing like just jumping up into the air, becoming the protagonist, and then using your final slash. In fact, that's probably the best way to describe it. Using this sword makes you feel like you're the protagonist, even if you've only got 2.5 million bounty. Darkblade, S tier as well. Next up is the Hallow Scythe, and it's perfect at its nighttime because this sword is so cool. Its first move, the Z move, it's like an orange tornado. Can't complain about how it looks visually. Its X move, Soul Execution, you dash towards them and then do a slash. In terms of visuals for all the mythical swords, it's honestly probably the worst looking in terms of all of them, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Now, the reason why I'm putting this sword in super high S tier is because it has the potential to one-shot admins. That's because there's this one-shot admin combo where if you knock an admin down into lava, they just lose all of their health because they can't escape the death cyclone, which means this sword can make admins bleed. Like, it is a scythe for a reason, which is kind of cool lore-wise, so it's S tier. No debate. Now, ignoring this one on the list, we're gonna go into this one next. The true triple katana. This sword got the best visual overhaul out of any sword in the game. I mean, just behold, watch. Z move. So visuals alone, this sword is easily top of S tier. In terms of how functional it is as well, you can definitely use this in actual combos. It just doesn't have too much movement. And also, it's just fun having a sword in your mouth. Like, what's not to like? So the true triple katana is also an S tier sword. Surprise, surprise, all the mythicals are S tier. Next up, we have got the admin only weapon. Actually, wait, hold on. I need to do something real quick. Let's do this. Boom, there we go. And there we go. I'm not going to elaborate on why that deserves that ranking right there. I mean, come on, let's be honest. None of us are going to see that sword or even use it. It sucks. And that's exactly why it's F tier. Unless I get one, in which case it's SSS. Well, this is my tier list of swords. This is basically like a non-PvP luck. So if you guys have any like different opinions because you